All right, let's put the women and children to bed and go looking for dinner. Jon Rothstein here on Inside College Basketball Now. Later in this show, we will dive deep into the first weekend of the 25-26 college basketball season. And also want to remind you to subscribe to Inside College Basketball Now on both Apple and Spotify. We want to be your Bible for the college basketball season and beyond. We are the only college basketball podcast coming to you 52 weeks out of the calendar year. Also, want you to hit the like button, want you to subscribe to us on both Apple and Spotify as we build this platform. This is the first season that Inside College Basketball Now is within the context of the CBS Podcast Network and obviously part of the infrastructure. And what we're looking to do is build an army of followers here for the college basketball fans. We need an army with us every single episode. And as I hinted at earlier in the week, the last time we spoke, Inside College Basketball Now is going to be live on Mondays and Thursdays during the 25-26 college basketball season. So during your lunch hour, after your lunch hour, we are going to be live with you. Now, in addition to being live with you on Mondays and Thursdays, we are also going to bring you some of the biggest and best guests in the sport on other days throughout the week. So we want you to know Mondays and Thursdays, 1 o'clock Eastern, we are live breaking down everything that's happening in college basketball during the season. And then sprinkled in throughout the week, we are going to bring you exclusive interviews with the biggest and best names in the sport. So as somebody who is now trying to create an army every single episode so that you, the college basketball fan, can be all that you can be, I am again going to encourage you to subscribe on Apple and Spotify and also get all over our shows and subscribe on YouTube. And we are now 4 days in to the 25-26 college basketball season. And there's been a handful of big games. Most of them were played earlier in the week. There's been a lot of bye games. And even though there are certain things you can take away from those games statistically, to me, we are just taking inventory of personnel. Because what somebody does in a bye game against a mid-major opponent, and I noticed this last night watching Georgia against Maryland Eastern Shore, because of name, image, and likeness, not only has the gap really widened between the haves and the have-nots in college sports, but when you watch a low major team go into a power conference opponent's home gym, like an SEC team like Georgia, the gap is crazy. And some of these scores are crazy in terms of how it reflects the gap that we have in talent. Now, there was since Monday one major power conference game. It was Tuesday between Duke and Texas. The Blue Devils won. A lot of people want to talk about Cam Boozer's big second half, finished the game with 15 and 13. But I want to piggyback on something that I talked about on Tuesday's show, and that's the biggest question marks that Duke had this season were point guard and its small forward. And I think more and more, the more and more we're going to watch Duke, you are going to see Dame Sarr separate himself as the Blue Devils' best option at small forward. Now, I was at a Duke practice in the preseason, and there were 3 guys up for the starting spot. Sarr, freshman wing Nick Kamenya, and also Darren Harris. And Sarr the other night defended, was really, really effective, making a couple of Bruce Bowen threes from that patented corner spot. And if he did not miss a dunk in the first half, would have finished with a very, very solid 10 points and 5 rebounds. And want to remind everybody that Duke will be on CBS Sports Network against Army, 7 o'clock next Tuesday night. So that's one big observation I have there. A couple of Big East teams played on Wednesday night. Greg McDermott got his 500th win at Creighton. Marquette won again. The Golden Eagles will be 2-0 going into Sunday's game against Indiana. And the Mountain West, for the 3rd time in 3 days, lost a bye game as Fresno State lost to USC Upstate. So the Mountain West, 3 days in to the 25-26 college basketball season, has seen 3 of its teams, Boise State, UNLV, and Fresno State, lose bye games at home. This league has always found a way to get great representation into the NCAA tournament. It will be interesting to see how some of the teams that are forecasted to be at the top of this conference perform in non-conference play. And I'm looking specifically at San Diego State and Utah State. Those are the cliff notes from everything that's happened since we got off the air at 2 o'clock Eastern on Tuesday until now. But as always, let's focus on three big things. And we start with a look ahead to Friday night's game between Kansas and North Carolina in Chapel Hill, which is simply awesome for the sport. To have two brands of this magnitude going head-to-head in an on-campus environment. Hats off to Bill Self. Hats off to Hubert Davis once again for making the series come to fruition. And if you look at the makeup of this game, even though it's Kansas and Carolina, even though it's two of the blue blood programs of the sport, a lot of players that will be at the epicenter of this game on Friday night will be going through things with their respective teams for the first time as a member of those programs. The only player on Kansas that has played in a meaningful game in a Kansas uniform is Flory Badunga. The only player on North Carolina that has played in a meaningful game for the Tar Heels is Seth Trimble. And I'll say this, and I think it's a real storyline when you look at the dynamics surrounding everything that's going on around North Carolina this season. This is a really important game for Hubert Davis. And it's really important for North Carolina early in the season to show tangible progress after the offseason improvements that it aimed to make in the transfer portal and also internationally. Why is this such an important game for Hubert Davis? It is very difficult in college basketball once you lose momentum as a program to get it back. It is very difficult in this climate for people to have a lot of patience in any type of situation when you're dealing with a blue blood program. We have seen it throughout the sport. If you are not getting results at a time where you can immediately turn over your roster every single year, the appetite for apathy increases. Now, I'll say this, and I said this to Hubert Davis, who was on this podcast last week. Hubert Davis has been the head coach for 4 years at North Carolina. 2 of those 4 years, North Carolina has been in position to go to the Final Four and win a national championship. First season, North Carolina goes to the national title game, loses to Kansas, beat Duke in the Final Four. Obviously, an epic run for Hubert Davis, which really started in Coach K's last home game at Cameron Indoor Stadium. And then it's ironic because the last win during that run was the epic win over Duke in the national semifinals. So year one for Hubert Davis turned into a run to remember. Now, that North Carolina team brought back everybody of significance from the team that had a convincing lead over Kansas midway through the national title game in 2022. R.J. Davis, Leaky Black, Caleb Love, and Armando Bacot were all back. Armando Bacot, again, was somebody who was a longtime North Carolina stalwart in the post. Brady Manick didn't come back. Pete Nance, a grad transfer from Northwestern, came, and North Carolina's rhythm and chemistry was never the same, even though it started the season as the consensus preseason number 1 team in the sport. Tar Heels missed the NCAA tournament. Hubert Davis' third year, R.J. Davis and Armando Bacot anchor a team that was a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament and just lost a very difficult game in the Sweet 16 to a very good Alabama team. It happens. It's part of the NCAA tournament. And then last year, North Carolina struggled for the majority of the season to be a consistent presence in the college basketball landscape. North Carolina found a way to get into the NCAA tournament, won a first 4 game against San Diego State. But it's not okay in this climate for blue blood programs just to be okay. And for North Carolina and for Hubert Davis, this is a game you've got to win at home. This is a game you have to send a message to your fan base, because I was in Chapel Hill during the preseason. We obviously talked to North Carolina's head coach, Hubert Davis, on this podcast last week. This is an opportunity to show everybody that the revamped roster you put together can win against a quality opponent. Now, I also want to say this. Kansas and this nucleus of players that Bill Self has put together, headlined by Darren Peterson, the talented freshman who's firmly in the mix to be the number 1 overall pick in the NBA draft. Kansas is also going to learn a lot about itself on Friday night, because I know Kansas went on the road in Louisville, won an exhibition game. I know Kansas on Monday night beat Green Bay at Fog Allen Fieldhouse. None of that matters. None of it matters. Nobody remembers who won an exhibition game 2 months from now. It's all about learning in a hostile environment what you're going to be able to do. I said on an off-season edition of Inside College Basketball Now that if you're evaluating everything on returning personnel, Kansas would not be viewed as a top 5 team in the Big 12 entering the season. Kansas was picked 6th in the Big 12 preseason poll. If that narrative is going to change, we are going to need to see something from Kansas and Darren Peterson in this type of an environment. Now, I'm not saying Darren Peterson is not a ridiculous talent. I'm not saying Darren Peterson is not somebody that could be an absolute star at the next level and be a first-team All-American this year. But we don't know yet if Darren Peterson is going to be good enough in his second college game to go on the road and lead Kansas to a win against North Carolina and Chapel Hill. And also, being in Lawrence during the preseason, the biggest concern that the Kansas staff has entering this year with a talent like Darren Peterson is that he has enough help around him. And I can tell you right now, I have a lot of confidence that Darren Peterson is going to produce on Friday night in Chapel Hill. First big road game for Cole Rosario as well, who reclassed to come to Kansas. Flory Badunga is now a marked man. He is going to have to go against the size and the length inside of Henry Vasar and Caleb Wilson, who, again, is somebody who is a talented freshman who had 22 in North Carolina's opener, who is not getting the same attention as other elite freshmen, but could start to join the conversation after this game. And I'll tell the story, and I'll tell it all season. When I was in Chapel Hill before the season, I was talking to a longtime, well-embedded mole in North Carolina's athletic department. And he said to me, John, I'm not saying Caleb Wilson is going to be Marvin Williams, but I will say this. Caleb Wilson really reminds me of Marvin Williams. I'm not saying he's going to be the number 2 pick in the draft like Marvin Williams was in 2005, but he looks like him. He plays like him a little bit. And I think by 9:30 on Friday night, part of the vernacular of college basketball could be that Caleb Wilson is joining the party when we talk about the Bansa, Darren Peterson, Koa Pete, and all these terrific freshmen, Cam Boozer included, from Duke. This is a big-time game for college basketball. It's a litmus test for Kansas to go on the road. And if you are a basketball Benny and you are somebody who lives for the intricacies of the sport, one of the things that Hubert Davis told me in talking to him multiple times in the preseason was North Carolina needed positional size and length at a different level than it had last year. So keep an eye on the different guys that get time defensively on Darren Peterson, whether it's Seth Trimble, whether it's Jonathan Powell, Luka Bogovac, who was just cleared on Monday night for North Carolina, who obviously North Carolina thinks is eventually going to be potentially a starter, is another guy who's going to be on the perimeter. And I'm curious to see how Bill Self with Flory Badunga matches up against a North Carolina front line with Wilson, with Vasar, with Zayden High, with players, again, who are built as more traditional bigs. And that's the interesting thing to me about the makeup of this North Carolina team, because you look at North Carolina and the way North Carolina is built with Caleb Wilson, with Henry Vasar, it's built much more like a Roy Williams type team than the teams we've seen under Hubert Davis. But make no mistake about it, North Carolina, 2 of the 4 years under Hubert Davis, has had a chance to play for a national championship. North Carolina needs to get back to being in that mix. And to do that with this North Carolina team, it's got to be a great defensive team. It's got to be a great rebounding team. And it needs its front line to overwhelm people. And at the epicenter of that is Caleb Wilson. And going into this game, everybody is going to put Darren Peterson in bold print. But it would not shock me from what I saw in the preseason, what I saw clips of on Monday night, and what I saw when North Carolina played at BYU, if after the game on Friday night, America is talking about Caleb Wilson, much like it was talking about Arizona's Koa Pete after Arizona beat Florida on Monday night in Las Vegas. An awesome, awesome early season matchup, but another big opportunity for Hubert Davis to show tangible progress that the Tar Heels are heading back in the proper direction. You look at North Carolina's non-conference schedule. North Carolina's got Kansas at home. North Carolina is also going to play Michigan State in Florida, neutral site game on Thanksgiving. There's a home game against an improved Georgetown team with Ed Cooley. There's also a road game at Kentucky as part of the ACC SEC Challenge. And then there's Ohio State in the CBS Sports Classic. Carolina's got to get, and I think is capable of getting, the lion's share of those games to be back to being vintage Carolina. For Hubert Davis and Carolina to do that, you win the basketball game at home Friday night in Chapel Hill. The second big thing on my radar this afternoon, with college basketball, the time of day really doesn't matter. Alabama's upcoming schedule, starting with Saturday's game against St. John's at Madison Square Garden, is an absolute gauntlet. And look right there at what's ahead for Nate Oates and the Crimson Tide. Saturday, you got the game against St. John's. You come home and you get Purdue and Tuscaloosa. November 19th in the United Center in Chicago, it's Brad Underwood in Illinois. Then 3 games in the Players era, Gonzaga, UNLV, and a third opponent that's TBD. Clemson on December 3rd, that's an ACC SEC Challenge game. We'll throw in a bye game against UT San Antonio on December 7th, and then Arizona in Birmingham on December 13th. That right there could be 5 quad 1 games for Nate Oates and company, a program that always schedules at an elite level. Alabama has, when healthy, one of the most electric backcourts in college basketball, with Aiden Holloway, who did not play in the opener earlier this week due to an injury, and LeBaron Philon. But in doing Alabama's games in the NCAA tournament last year in the first 2 rounds, when Alabama beat Robert Morris and St. Mary's, one of the big things that gave last year's Alabama team a major, major advantage was the front line with Grant Nelson and Cliff Amore. Those guys are no longer in Tuscaloosa. So going into Saturday's game against St. John's, one of the biggest things that I'm looking at is how will Alabama's front court handle Zuby Ejiofor, Bryce Hopkins, and also Dylan Mitchell, who to me is, with every single game, emerging as one of the top utility players in college basketball. Now, Alabama sat out 3 key players in the opener earlier this week: Aiden Holloway, Latrell Wrightsell, and also Keaton Bristow. We don't have, as of now, their status for Saturday against St. John's, but Alabama is going to need all hands on deck to navigate this stretch. Now, Nate Oates has always been somebody who has played a schedule like this to give his team the best chance to obviously get ready for the SEC and the best chance to have a quality seed in the NCAA tournament. But now I'm looking at Alabama. Alabama's going to need Aiden Holloway Saturday against St. John's and beyond. And for me, this game on Saturday at Madison Square Garden adds to what is a unique history in a very short period of time that Nate Oates and Rick Pitino have together. If you think back into the bubble in 2021, Alabama as a 2 seed played Iona, a 15 seed, in the first round of the NCAA tournament in the bubble. It was a very competitive game. Late in the second half, Alabama broke it open, went and moved on, where it lost to UCLA in the Sweet 16. The next year, as part of a tournament in Orlando in November, Iona, coached by Rick Pitino, beat Alabama on a neutral court. And now we are looking at a game Saturday in Madison Square Garden that, make no mistake about it, feels like a Sweet 16 caliber game. That is the vibe I am getting as somebody who will be attending the game at MSG on Saturday at high noon. And look, we have talked a lot on this show about St. John's, about the makeup of this roster. One that I have said repeatedly is the most talented in the sport. Doesn't mean St. John's is going to be the best team. But I think when you look at the assortment of players that St. John's has assembled, it is unequivocally the most talented roster in the sport. And I know there has been a lot of focus and a lot of talk on the point guard spot for St. John's, because St. John's does not have a traditional point guard or multiple players that can initiate offense like it did last year with Kadari Richmond, with Davon Smith, with Simeon Wilcher. But I got to tell you, watching Dylan Mitchell in a preseason practice, watching Dylan Mitchell against Towson and Michigan in the exhibition season, and also watching him against Quinnipiac, who's picked to win the MAC on Monday, I'm seeing this guy, talented lefty. I'm seeing him play the point forward spot, and I'm seeing the plethora of options he has around him. Osiah Sellers, Jozon Sannon, who I loved as a sixth man coming up on Monday night against Quinnipiac, came off the bench, really made some shots. Ian Jackson, Bryce Hopkins, Zuby Ejiofor. I'm looking at Dylan Mitchell for St. John's as somebody, and he's got a long way to go to be in this type of a category. But Dylan Mitchell, to me, as a point forward, has some of the same attributes that Andre Jackson had during the 22-23 season for UConn, when Jackson was far and away the best utility player in the sport. And if you think back to that season for UConn, Andre Jackson did a lot of the facilitating for UConn as a point forward because Tristan Newton wasn't near the level he was at when UConn won its second title in 23-24. So Dylan Mitchell's a player you want to put in bold print as maybe the top utility player in the sport. St. John's 25 assists on Monday against Quinnipiac. Pretty good for a team that obviously does not have a traditional point guard. But this starts a ruthless opening stretch for Alabama, which again is going to be followed up by a game against Purdue and a game against Illinois in the United Center in Chicago before Gonzaga in the Players Era Festival. And for St. John's, you know, I know that everybody says it's the first week of the season. I know that everybody says you're not the same team you are in late February and March that you are in, you know, November. I get that. I understand that. I want to continue to hammer this point home. Every single game matters in college basketball. And if you are St. John's and you are looking at the fact that you have this roster and you're looking at the fact that Rick Pitino is your head coach, I've said it before and I'll say it again. In my lifetime, since I've been doing this and covering college basketball, this is unequivocally St. John's best chance to get to a Final Four. And why this game on Saturday matters so much is because you have an opportunity at home to beat a quality opponent, which will lead to a quad one victory, which will give you the foundation for a resume needed to be the number one seed in the East region on Selection Sunday. Why is that so important? If St. John's were to be the top seed in the East region, that means first and second round games in Philadelphia. And then if you advance, Sweet 16 and Elite 8 games in Washington, D.C. That means the St. John's fan can go to Penn Station and just get on the Amtrak to go support the team on the way to the Final Four. But you know as well as I do, this is only November. And if you're an Alabama fan and you've got that upcoming schedule, you better call your cardiologist and you better grab your nitroglycerin pills. The third big thing I want to get to, and the third big thing I want to look at right now, is another massive game that we have on Saturday. And I want to spotlight two freshmen for Arkansas, Darius Acuff and Meleek Thomas, who have been outstanding out of the gate for John Calipari. I think in order for Darius Acuff and Meleek Thomas to be in a situation to start getting mentioned in the class of the top freshmen in college basketball, which based on their production, they should be. Arkansas has to win this game Saturday night at Michigan State. Now, if we're being fair, Arkansas won a bye game to start the season, won a exhibition game at Memphis, and destroyed Cincinnati in an exhibition game at Bud Walton Arena. We don't know for certain by any means that either Cincinnati or Memphis will be NCAA tournament teams in 2026. So this is, to me, the first real litmus test for John Calipari in Arkansas. Now, you look at what Acuff did in the opener, 22 4 dimes. You look at what Meleek Thomas did in the opener, 21, 7 assists, 6 rebounds. John Calipari has had great freshman backcourts before. 2017, De'Aaron Fox, Malik Monk. 2015, Tyler Ulis, Devin Booker. Now, those players did not start on the 2015 team that went 38-1, went to the Final Four and lost to Wisconsin because they were playing behind Andrew and Aaron Harrison. But with that said, this is something that Arkansas and John Calipari are going to continue to fight. And I have talked about it multiple times on this show. If you took Arkansas off the chest of Darius Acuff and Meleek Thomas and you put Kentucky there, how would people be talking about this backcourt? How would people be talking about this team? Because I look at Arkansas, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, the Razorbacks look like a bona fide contender to win the SEC regular season title and a bona fide contender to be a very high seed on Selection Sunday. But you want respect. You want the opportunity to be mentioned as an elite team, and these two players we mentioned among this elite freshman class at the top of the list. You got to go to East Lansing, and you got to beat Michigan State. Now, I've looked at Michigan State every which way I could. We talked to Tom Izzo a couple of months ago on this podcast. I talked to their staff during the preseason. I see a known commodity at point guard in Jeremy Fears. I see an elite athlete and a unique talent in Cone Carr on the wing. I see vintage Tom Izzo bruising and toughness up front in Jackson Kohler and also Carson Cooper. I don't see a clear-cut option on the wing for Michigan State that's ready to inherit the minutes that were left behind by Jace Richardson and Jaden Akins from a team that won the Big Ten regular season title and went to the Elite Eight and lost to Auburn on a day where Michigan State did just not shoot the ball very well in Atlanta. I don't see that for Michigan State. I look at the team, I see they're a wing short. Kurt Tang has gotten a little bit of a run. Obviously, Trey Fort's gotten a little bit of a run, the transfer from Samford. We'll see if Cam Ward plays more. But I look at Michigan State, and I see a team that is lacking offense. And Saturday night, we are going to see Michigan State go up against a team in Arkansas, in my opinion, that is underrated nationally, and its backcourt, quite frankly, is being a little bit disrespected nationally. Because I understand that the Kentucky fan obviously has the feelings about John Calipari, and 15 years is a long time, and there was an appetite for change. I know that. I respect it. I understand it. I know the last couple of years in the NCAA tournament did not go, obviously, anywhere near Kentucky fans had hoped for. But I will say this. When you look at the body of work for John Calipari at Kentucky, except for the last couple of years, 2010, Elite Eight, 2011, Final Four, 2012, national title, 2013, Nerlens Noel tears his ACL, they missed the tournament, 2014, national title game, 2015, Final Four, 2016 with Jamal Murray, you lose to Indiana, 2017, Elite Eight, 2018, Sweet 16, 2019, Elite Eight. There was a couple of missed opportunities to extend, obviously, the number of Final Four trips. But at the end of the day, here's a guy who in 2011, 2012, 2014, and 2015 went to the Final Four. 14 years out of place, you go to the Final Four 4 times in a crazy environment like the NCAA tournament. That is pretty good. And we'll see what happens now with Arkansas after playing again Cincinnati and Memphis and playing a bye game on Monday as Arkansas goes on the road in a real game against a terrific, terrific opponent in Michigan State that obviously is one of the great programs, even if Michigan State is a wing short. Want to get to you and your comments in the chat. Want to hear from you on everything that is right now on your plate and your desk in your thought process for college basketball. Want to remind you as well that we are coming to you here on Inside College Basketball Now every Thursday and Monday during the season at 1 o'clock Eastern. That's every Monday and Thursday at 1 o'clock Eastern. And other days during the week, I'm going to bring you exclusive interviews with the biggest names in the sport. We need you to subscribe on both Apple and Spotify, as well as like us and subscribe on YouTube. I need an army with me every single episode from now and 52 weeks out of the calendar year. So my question to you, are you ready to be all you can be? Jon Rothstein here on Inside College Basketball Now.
They want to take this place from us.
My family is in danger. My wife is lost to me, and I don't have time.
1923, new season now streaming, exclusively on Paramount Plus.
All right, Jon Rothstein back here on Inside College Basketball Now. Want to get to you in the chat. So the chat right now is, oh my God, it is bleeding with people who want to talk. Give us an emoji. Feel upbeat. It's Thursday right now. If you want to have a drink with lunch, by all means, pop open a Peroni. Who knows? My jokes will be funnier. You'll go outside. The buildings will look taller. Okay, let's jump into this right now. We have J.O. Ireland says, John, the Big 12 is on fire once again this year. Arizona taking out Florida, while Arizona is only ranked 4 in the Big 12. Well, I changed my rankings, and if you want to follow my rankings every day, I post them off my Twitter feed, the Rothstein 45. Arizona right now is now 4 in the country for me. And every Friday, again, you can get all this stuff off my Twitter account. I'm going to have Arizona as one of the 4 projected seeds in my bracket breakdown. I will project what I think for the NCAA tournament each and every Friday during the week. Let's keep going right now through the comments. And Jackson Leatherwood says, Jim Tanner has put a great roster together. Jim Tanner is the general manager for North Carolina. North Carolina hired an agent in Jim Tanner, an ex-agent in this climate. So I think it's also important to remember, and we talked to Hubert Davis about this last week, the job that Hubert Davis got in 2021 compared to now is vastly different. This is the first time North Carolina has had a general manager. It's important to remember that moving forward as this climate continues to change. Let's keep going now. Zachary Goss is talking about North Carolina, and he says, and our PG can actually shoot now. I'm excited to see Wilson against Peterson in this matchup. Well, the PG he's talking about is Kyan Evans, the transfer from Colorado State, who can really shoot, had a big hand in Colorado State's run towards the end of last season where Colorado State almost made the Sweet 16 before Derek Queen made that shot against Maryland. Let's keep going now. Let's find some other. Jamie Villanueva 2618 says, John never gives Kansas any love. Well, I think that's a little bit false. I think I'm somebody, if you look back in history, when Kansas was winning the Big 12, when Kansas was going to the Final Four and winning national championships under Bill Self, as it did in 2008 and 2022, I always gave Kansas credit. But the facts are the facts. The last 2 years under Bill Self have been the worst 2 years for Kansas basketball since Self was hired in 2003. Now, with that said, the job that Bill Self has done at Kansas is second to none. Regular season dominance, Final Fours, and also multiple national championships. But Bill Self, who's also been on this show, and I've talked to him about it in person, will be the first to tell you the last 2 years have not been up to the standard. The question is, will this team, with a freshman star in Darren Peterson, be good enough to go on the road 5 days into the season and beat North Carolina on the road? Because it's not just about Darren Peterson. And that's what people need to understand. Everybody wants to talk about how great these freshmen are. I'm going to say it again. Freshman success and freshman long-term potential does not equate to instant and guaranteed great results in college basketball. Look at Rutgers last year. 2nd and 5th pick in the draft. Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey. St. John's last year, 0 draft picks. St. John's won more than double the amount of games than Rutgers. So the question is this: do you want to have your program being talked about with the fact that one player or multiple players could be high draft picks the next year in the NBA draft? Or do you want to win games and have a season to remember? Your choice. Let's keep getting some more questions here in the chat. Really good stuff right now in the chat. Ashley Quinlan wants to know, John, who do you got Saturday, St. John's or Bama? I expect St. John's to win the game in the Garden at home, and I expect St. John's front line of Ejiofor, Hopkins, and Mitchell to get more and more attention as the season goes on. You look at some of, obviously, the best front lines in college basketball. Florida, because of the core four that are back, Howe, Condon, Shinyulu, and also Handlogden, are going to get you with the depth. I think after Friday night, Caleb Wilson and Henry Vasar are going to make their case as a very, very talented front court. Cam Boozer and Pat Gongba from Duke are also capable. Yaxel Lendeborg with either Merez Johnson or Adai Mara. But I think when you're looking at St. John's right now, just in terms of the 4-5, with Hopkins and with Ejiofor, again, after Saturday, we will see, and we will know more after Saturday. We will see why that combination is as good as any in the sport. Let's keep going now and see what else we have here. J.O. Ireland chiming in again. This year is different for KU. Council is a complete dog defensively. Well, you're talking about Melvin Council, who 2 years ago was at Wagner. Last year was at St. Bonaventure. Facially looks a lot like Tyshawn Taylor. Look, all this is coming out in the wash. It's going to come out in the wash 7 o'clock on Friday night. And that's the great thing, because we've been doing so much in the offseason, which has been so much fun. Now it's time to find out what will actually happen when the ball is thrown up in the air. And that's what we're going to find out in Chapel Hill, 7 o'clock on Friday night. I will get you some nuggets and some games to watch when we get out of here. Take a quick break now. Jon Rothstein here on Inside College Basketball Now.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
All right, Jon Rothstein back here on Inside College Basketball Now. I want to remind you to subscribe to Inside College Basketball Now on both Apple and Spotify. We want to be your Bible for the college basketball season and beyond. We are the only college basketball podcast coming to you 52 weeks out of the calendar year. Also, want you to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I need an army with me for every single show that we do on this podcast. And again, during the season, Mondays at 1 o'clock, Thursdays at 1 o'clock Eastern, we are going to bring you a live edition of Inside College Basketball Now. Be part of the Army. Be all you can be. The first good nugget I want to talk about is chasing greatness. I'm talking about Marquette's Chase Ross. I have said ad nauseum that for Marquette to make the NCAA tournament this year, Chase Ross had to play like an all-Big East caliber player. Through 2 games for the Golden Eagles, 19 points per game, 4.5 rebounds a game, 5 assists per game. Marquette, Indiana, Sunday in Chicago. That's a litmus test. Nugget number 2, the gem of the Great Northwest. Another freshman to put on your radar is Washington big man Hannes Steinbeck. According to the well-embedded moles that I have in the Great Northwest, Steinbeck has been Washington's best player throughout the preseason, and obviously he played great in the opener against Arkansas Pine Bluff with 21 points and 7 rebounds. Where Denver visits Washington tonight. That is game 2 of this season for Danny Sprinkle's club. According to Danny Sprinkle via text message this morning, Desmond Claude, the transfer from USC, will not be available for tonight's game due to an injury. He also did not play in the opener. Nugget number 3, a key non-conference battle. This is off the radar a little bit, but it's a sneaky good game Friday night. Utah State, VCU, and Frisco, Texas. These 2 programs are going to be picked near the top of their respected conferences, the A-10 and the Mountain West. Utah State going for its 2nd straight NCAA tournament appearance under Jared Calhoun. Again, the Mountain West has lost 3 bye games already this week, so a quality non-conference game and a quality non-conference win would pay major dividends for the league. This looks like it should be at worst a quad 2 game for the winner as the season marches on. All right, 3 games to watch, which I'm going to do every Monday and Thursday. And I'm also, as the schedule deepens, going to give you some under-the-radar games as well. The 3 biggest games between now and Monday are Kansas at North Carolina, Alabama at St. John's, and Arkansas at Michigan State. 3 under-the-radar games to watch when we look at the weekend and a little bit beyond. Georgetown at Maryland, Friday night in College Park. This is the start of a local series between these 2 programs. Ed Cooley and Buzz Williams going head-to-head. They know each other from the Big East. Georgetown feels like it's gradually building momentum under Ed Cooley. Ed Cooley now in his 3rd year at the Hilltop. Saturday at Mohegan Sun, Providence against Virginia Tech. 2 teams that look bubble caliber to me at the start of the season. Kim English has done a really, really good job revamping Providence's perimeter. And this will be the first major national game for Virginia Tech import, Neoclis Avdalis, who I think has a chance to be an absolute star for Mike Young, one of the great offensive coaches. Neoclis Avdalis could be similar for Virginia Tech to what Yegor Demon was for BYU last season. And then Saturday night at Spokane Arena, Mark Few and Gonzaga will welcome Porter Moser and Oklahoma to the Great Northwest. Oklahoma with a backcourt of Miami transfer Nigel Pack and also St. Joe's transfer Xavier Brown. Looks like a sneaky good team in that SEC, a team that I think will be an NCAA tournament again in 2026. Want to remind you once again to please subscribe to Inside College Basketball Now on both Apple and Spotify. We want to be your Bible for the college basketball season and beyond. We are the only college basketball podcast coming to you 52 weeks out of the calendar year. And also want to remind you that we're coming to you every Monday and Thursday at 1 o'clock Eastern, and we need an army with us on this show. Be all you can be. I'm Jon Rothstein, and this is Inside College Basketball Now.